What's up, everybody? It's your boy Ryan, and this is the Thunder Channel. On nootropics, on testosterone, on performance. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Hit the bell to get notified of all the content that comes out. If you get the YouTube app, it'll notify you in real time. Products support this broadcast. I'll explain them later, but as an introduction, number one, the Cortex stack. This is a nootropic. Secondarily, the Torque stack. This is also a nootropic. And then lastly, if you need to hire me for biohacking consulting, you can do that in under a minute at livecortex.com. All right, so right into it. You've probably heard about this new sort of buzzing potential nootropic that's kind of like a caffeine alternative circulating around the nootropics and performance community. And yes, we are talking about paraxanthine. Some of you probably who understand like the molecular structure of some of the other xanthines, methylxanthines, that xanthine sounds somewhat similar, right, to caffeine. Essentially, caffeine, theobromine, and a few other stimulants are methylxanthines. Xanthine itself is the base from which caffeine and a lot of these other compounds are created. And the primary mechanisms of action of methylxanthines are the blockade of adenosine receptors. When adenosine itself as a neurotransmitter binds to those receptors, that kind of turns on tiredness. That's one mechanism by which you get tired. So blocking those receptor sites gives you more wakefulness and energy and focus, and in some cases dopamine release. But back to paraxanthine. So what is it? Just another caffeine analog? It's just another kind of thing that's like, gives you energy. There are some differences in it. So when you metabolize caffeine, something like 80 or 85% of that caffeine that gets turned into paraxanthine, right? So you could essentially get paraxanthine by just consuming caffeine. However, there's a couple benefits to having paraxanthine in the mix versus caffeine. And one of them is that paraxanthine is technically one step closer to the process of binding to the adenosine receptor, shutting off tiredness and giving you energy. So like one would imagine, okay, maybe it affects me sooner, maybe there's a more pronounced effect, or maybe it lasts longer or something. Like, what is the benefit? So let's talk about some of the literature on it, because there are some papers on it. First, in a paper titled Acute Paraxanthine Ingestion Improves Cognition and Short-Term Memory and Helps Sustain Attention in a Double-Blind Placebo-Controlled Crossover Trial. Where the paper suggests PXN, which is paraxanthine, enhanced the ability to store and retrieve information, random information of increasing complexity from short-term memory. They also go on to say that the results suggest that acute paraxanthine ingestion of 200 milligrams may affect some measures of short-term memory, reasoning, and response to cognitive challenges, and help sustain attention. All right, so this is pretty cool. It helps memory, and I think the other methylxanthines can do that too. Like if as a byproduct of improving speed of processing and general cognition and wakefulness, you're probably going to have some better memory. And I guess that's, somewhat impressive about paraxanthine, but here's where it gets more interesting and perhaps a little more impressive, and certainly distinct from caffeine, theobromine, and other methylxanthines. In a paper titled Effects of Paraxanthine and Caffeine on Sleep, Locomotor Activity, and Body Temperature, and they did this study in narcoleptic mice, so sort of keep that in mind, it tells us something very important. It goes, paraxanthine is a central nervous stimulant and exhibits higher potency at the A1 and A2 receptors. These are the adenosine receptors that caffeine normally blocks. And that, again, if adenosine, the inherent neurotransmitter, binds to those receptors, it basically makes you tired, and this works to exert the opposite effect to give you cognition, wakefulness, motivation, energy. But then it goes on to say it has a lower toxicity than caffeine and lesser anxiogenic effects. Lesser anxiogenic effects than caffeine? Now that's impressive. And that's what makes paraxanthine distinct from the other caffeine analogs, and certainly caffeine itself. It's a caffeine-like stimulant, but that produces less of an anxiety and jittery response when you take it. Well, that's pretty cool. Too good to be true? Maybe not. There's a Reddit thread titled Paraxanthine, ? And a user explains his experience. He goes, and I'm not sure how he got it individually. I'm not sure that he was able to do that. Probably got it in an energy drink, which I'm going to get to. He goes, I love it. It feels like a much better, smoother, and cleaner version of caffeine. My cardiometabolic biomarkers don't get jacked up like when I am on caffeine. None of the jitters, anxiety, cold sweats, or occasional headache I get from caffeine. Been using 300 milligrams. Now, this user's experience mirrors the literature exactly. A cardiometabolic biomarkers is just sort of an interesting way of probably saying systolic blood pressure and heart rate. So what he's saying is his blood pressure didn't rise and his heart rate didn't rise while taking paraxanthine. Now, this is pretty good. However, before we get super excited, I did manage to dig up a paper that said the following. Paraxanthine has been found to be an equipotent adenosine antagonist to caffeine in vitro. Paraxanthine significantly increased diastolic blood pressure, plasma concentrations of epinephrine, norepinephrine and free fatty acids. So that's basically telling us that paraxanthine at least has the ability to increase some of those cardiometabolic biomarkers, indicating that at least as it relates to those things, it may not be any better than caffeine or like an alternative like teacrine or theobromine. So, I mean, your experience may vary if you can get your hands on it, which again, I'm going to get to in a second, but we do have that previous piece of literature that tells us it is less anxiogenic than caffeine. This is good. But the real question is, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, where the hell can you get it? And that's kind of where the problem arises. There seem to be, so first of all, finding paraxanthine individually, I've scoured the web for it. I can't find it. I've talked with some of my chemical manufacturing companies, the people that are like sending me bulk modafinil and things of this nature. They don't have it. They don't know anyone who has it. I can't find it in singular powder form or in capsule form. There seem to be a couple energy drinks, however, that have paraxanthine in them that you can get. So that's your best bet in trying paraxanthine. The issue with that, though, and all these just a couple energy drinks, is that they're stocked with other compounds and in some cases other nootropics like cholinergics, like alpha GPC. One of them has like NALT, 5-HTP, theanine. I'm not sure that they're actually dosed intelligently. They're sitting with like between 200 and 300 milligrams of paraxanthine, but again, they've got all these other compounds in there. So you're not getting isolated paraxanthine whatsoever. And really, from my perspective as a nootropics experimenter and looking at what the mechanism of action is, you'd want to try it by itself to see how effective it is. That isn't to say that some of these drink companies, don't have good product and that it may not, it may be beneficial for you, it may give you some sort of good energy and whatever, but you kind of can't get the compound individually, which really sucks. And the fact that there's a bunch of other stimulants, in some cases where they don't show you the quantities of the other stimulants and nootropics that are in these drinks, that should be an immediate turnoff for basically everyone. It is for me. It's enough for me to not buy that drink. Now, the issue on availability of the individual compound paraxanthine seems to stem to the fact that there's really no FDA guidance on the compound. There's no policy on it, or I guess there's limited policy on it. So this is probably where chemical manufacturers, etc., and then, upstream with the supplement manufacturing companies, like companies that make our product, Torque and Cortex, they don't have access to it. So I imagine in the future, this is definitely an opportunity for nootropics companies like Nootropics Depot, Nootropics Source, and others. When it becomes available to actually source and sell it as an individual supplement, they're probably going to have it if that time comes, which, there's enough interest in the market around this compound that it's probably going to come. In the meantime, though, what people don't understand as far as the less anxiogenic methylxanthine derivative is that there is a compound out there that aims to do the same thing, that does also in the literature and the anecdotals produce an energy effect without the jitters and side effects, and that is teacrine. That is the most underrated nootropic there is. I'm not sure why people aren't screaming from rooftops about it. I've been taking it for 3 years, 4 years. Very, very powerful compound. And teacrine you can dose in 100 to 250 milligram doses by itself. You don't need to consume caffeine. You can just consume teacrine, and you can get it from places like Nootropics Depot and from Amazon in singular powder form or capsule form. But perhaps the best way to take teacrine is in combination with theobromine, with Alcar, with citicoline low-dosed, and with Mucuna. And that is exactly what the Torque nootropic stack is. That's our stack. Now, we've got it sitting at 175 milligrams in Torque, which is the dose that's generally most effective to most folks. I sit and did a lot of thinking about my experience with clients, my personal experience with teacrine, and above 200, people tend to actually get jittery on the stuff, or it makes them overstimulated and they can't focus. Below 175, and sure, the effects are still there, but they're not as prominent. So 175 milligrams is probably the best dose for teacrine. Now, you can get that individually, or again, the best way to stack it is with some of these other compounds, and we built that in the Torque stack. So that's literally one of our nootropic stacks, and you can buy it in the description of this video. So yes, paraxanthine looks really interesting. The literature is convincing. The anecdotals on Reddit where people are like, hey, it made me less jittery, I felt good, my cardiometabolic factors didn't go awry when consuming it, this is really good. All that is enticing and interesting. But as I said, the only way that you're going to really be able to try paraxanthine is if you're willing to consume an energy drink with a bunch of other compounds, most of which don't even have the ingredients broke down in them. It's you don't know how, one of them has alpha GPC, you don't know how much GPC is it. You take too much GPC, 99% of people and 99% of products believe that alpha GPC and citicoline in these choline sources should be dosed in 200 to 300 milligram quantities. That's because they've never worked with people. They're not actually into nootropics. They don't study it at large capacities. They just found some studies. Oh, 300 milligrams is dose. Like if they've got 300 milligrams of alpha GPC in the drink, then yeah, eventually it's going to be too much choline and you're going to get loopy and you're going to get side effects. But if you're willing to try it, there are some products out there, and the one that I referenced was a company called Update, no affiliation, because again, we don't do affiliate links on this channel. And by the way, there's a lot of shenanigans in the sort of YouTube biohacking sphere, and there's a lot of people downright lying. Perhaps that's a video for the future. But just think a little wisely when you see someone talking up a product, an individual nootropic or whatever, and then they've got an affiliate link in their fucking description for it so they can get commission. Anyway, as far as paraxanthine goes, I think in the future, the popular nootropics companies will recognize the opportunity. They probably already do, and the moment it becomes available, they're probably going to have it. All right, so that's my take on paraxanthine. Yeah, it looks pretty interesting, potentially less anxiogenic. I mean, it's the next step down the process to getting to the effect of the blockade on the adenosine receptors and giving you that wakefulness kind of energy. Caffeine itself metabolizes right into paraxanthine. That's essentially where most of your effects are coming from, and it seems to exert a higher affinity at the A1 and A2 adenosine receptors, which is, yeah, it's pretty interesting. Hope that makes sense. Thanks so much for watching. As I explained in the beginning of the video, we've got a couple products that support the broadcast. Number one, the Cortex stack. Doesn't have caffeine in it, but it's very, very strong, kind of like a caffeine alternative. Gives you motivation, mental energy, and verbal fluency. It's been on the market for just about 9 years. A lot of entrepreneurs and productive people use it. You can buy it at livecortex.com or in the description of this video. Secondarily, the Torque stack. Now, this is a stack that's based on a very strong caffeine alternative called teocrine, and Torque is like 6 to 8 hours of a lot of solid, clean stimulant energy. That's the whole basis of it, and that's why we market it that way, because it does not give you jitters, right? It gives you that clean focus, good mental energy, motivation as well, and improves memory, among other things. Doesn't give you jitters and doesn't kind of fuss with your cardiometabolic factors. You can buy the Torque stack at livecortex.com or in the description below. That is our product, and I've always got the stuff on hand. Like if you don't have Torque like next to your workstation, you are missing out. If you need my help to help you formulate nootropic stacks, dial in your TRT protocol, I really have become specialized in a lot of areas around biohacking. You can hire me in under a minute at livecortex.com. We have a bunch of different packages ranging from a simple call with me, a 20-minute call, 40-minute call. We've got hour calls. We've got custom protocol formulation to longer term programs, and you can find all those in the description of this video or at livecortex.com. All right, friends, pleasure being with you. More content to come soon. I look forward to it. I look forward to seeing you there. We'll talk to you on the next one.